All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. So we are a couple of months away from Jayden Daniels officially being the quarterback for the Washington Commanders, but they also have a projected over $80 million in free agency. Now, I'm just kidding about Jayden Daniels. I'm not really kidding because I think the dude is an absolute stud, and I do think Washington will select him at the second pick. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the video, but they have a lot of money in free agency, and I expect them to make at least one big-time splash. You know, we compare the Commanders on this channel a lot to last year's Houston Texans, where it was like a 3-win team and they had a bunch of money in free agency. You got a new head coach coming on in here. They hit a home run with CJ Stroud and they hit a home run on the rest of their draft picks. They do a great job at spending free agent money, bringing in the right players, the right talent, and they end up making the playoffs and they end up winning against Cleveland Browns. And it was just like, the quickest turnaround that we have seen in quite some time with such a young squad with a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback. And I think Washington is in a very similar position. And, I'm just joking around with Jayden Daniels. It's probably going to be Drake May or Jayden Daniels. But at the same time, we have heard that Washington probably won't spend a lot of money in this year's free agency class. Now, I will take that with a grain of salt because they're going to have like between $80 and $100 million in cap space. I mean, it's truly an absurd amount. But I really think this team can quickly turn around Dan Quinn. I got my offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury. And point is just if you can get the quarterback right, everything else will fall into place. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about the draft, a little bit about free agency, D'Andre Swift and L'Jarius Sneed. But before we get into tonight's video, if you guys enjoy it, be sure to hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily NFL content. Commanders fans, if we try and get this video to 250 likes, that would mean the absolute world to me. You guys have been blessing these videos. We're going to be posting a couple a week from here on out. So here's a direct quote from new GM Adam Peters, all right? There are a lot of holes we need to fill, but we always want to build through the draft and supplement through free agency. This year won't be a big spending spree. We're not going to go out and blow all that money in year one. We're going to build a competitive team with the right types of guys, then have a great draft after that. We will find the types of players we want to build our team, supplement them with people that can really make us very competitive this year, and then draft really well to build a competitive team. So, the point is this, and I've got D'Andre Swift probably in the title and on the thumbnail here. When I look at Washington and I look at their offense, it's kind of weird. You got to take a lot of it with a grain of salt because of Eric Bieniemy. Sam Howell got shafted, the short end of the stick there, but they're bringing in a QB. All right, we know they're bringing in a quarterback. Adam Peters actually said, because we got the draft combine stuff going on right now, kind of talking about the difficulty of finding the right quarterback for your team. At the direct quote of most of them are mistakes. But Jayden Daniels did meet yesterday and today with the Washington Commanders. And guys, I really think it's going to be him. We'll talk about that at the end. But D'Andre Swift. So here's what I like about D'Andre Swift coming on over. First things first, Washington this season, and once again, we got to take it with a grain of salt, ranked 27th in total rushing yards, right? Brian Robinson Jr., 178 rushes, 733 yards, the average over 4.1 yard per carry. It's going to work for me. But Antonio Gibson, who had 265 rushing yards, he's going to be a free agent. And the reason I'm bringing up D'Andre Swift here is because there's some familiarity there, right? Washington Commanders picked up former Eagles offensive coordinator Brian Johnson as their new assistant head coach and passing game coordinator. Now, Swift is not going to get a crazy contract. I've seen a projected 3-year, $18 million contract, and I think that works out perfectly because he's coming off a Pro Bowl season with Philadelphia. He had over 1,000 rushing yards. He had about 220 receiving yards. That's like the lowest mark of his entire career. Usually he's a crazy dual threat running back with the ability like 300, 400 receiving yards per game. Not really how he was implemented in the Eagles offense, but he can certainly catch the ball. 39 catches, 214 yards and a touchdown. But yeah, he made a Pro Bowl. He spent his first 3 years in Detroit. Detroit was, before Dan Campbell got into town, kind of a dumpster fire, and he dealt with a couple of injuries. But this season, played every single football game, and I do think, they were dead last. The Commanders were dead last in total rushing attempts and 5th to last in total rushing yards. Whether you decide to go out there and, I even think getting D'Andre Swift's like a big time splash at that position in that market. I'm thinking like Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. But getting a dual threat running back to pair up with Brian Robinson Jr. and most likely a Jayden Daniels or Drake May, I think that's got success written all over it. Now, while we're on the topic with Jayden Daniels, like, he's my clear-cut pick. He's just my clear-cut pick, and it's got nothing to do with Drake May. But I do think Jayden Daniels might actually be the best quarterback in this year's class. Guys, the highlights are just unbelievable. His athleticism is insane. He's got very good pocket presence. He can throw a deep ball. He can obviously scramble with his feet. He just won the Heisman. He played in the SEC. You really can't go wrong with drafting SEC players most of the time. But Jayden Daniels just makes plays. You know, he's got that charisma. He's got that it factor. I know people are a little bit worried about his size. He's 6'4", but he's only 210 pounds. So people are worried about his injuries. People are worried about sustainability. And, you know, if he were to go down with an injury, I will just say, I think the Commanders keep Sam Howell regardless of what happens at QB. I also don't think Sam Howell has a shot at being QB1 next season, unfortunately. For Sam Howell, you got the second pick in the draft, man. They're going to take a quarterback, and they're going to take the best quarterback available to them, whatever Adam Peters decides. But, man, I'm just starting to think, you know, Jayden Daniels, Brian Robinson, DeAndre Swift, Jahan Dotson, Scary Terry, $80 million in free agency, or $80 million in total cap. Like, they can make some crazy-ass moves. Now, I will say real quick defensively, L'Jarius Sneed just requested a trade, and he's coming off a phenomenal season. Like I said, even though Adam Peters said we're not going to be going out there and spending anything crazy, I do anticipate them to make at least one big-time splash, and I wouldn't be surprised if they made two, one on offense and one on defense. You know, the Commanders had the worst defense in the league last season. That's why you bring in Dan Quinn, the defensive-minded head coach. He's going to change things around immediately. Once again, we go back to Houston 2 years ago. They had a measly defense, not too many intriguing pieces. They have a great draft with Will Anderson Jr., D'Amico Ryans, defensive-minded head coach, and they just hit on a bunch of draft picks, and they hit on a bunch of free agents. But L'Jarius Sneed, 2 years ago, 108 total tackles. But this past season, he still had a great year. 51% of the passes thrown in his direction were completed. That is a really good defensive statistic. And he only allowed a passer rating of just 56.2. So we've got free agency beginning in about 2 weeks from the time of this video. And I would say, draft aside, and we'll know how we're going to have a better idea of how they're going to draft once free agency concludes or begins. Guys, I got $80 million in cap space. DeAndre Swift, L'Jarius Sneed, Jayden Daniels. That itself, those three players are going to get you some wins. So I'm curious to hear what my Commanders fans have to say. I'm curious if you guys want a big-time splash. I'm curious who that splash is. But most importantly, let me know your thoughts on DeAndre Swift coming on over to the Washington Commanders. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily NFL content. If you guys want more Commanders videos, let me know down below. But have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next.